I am Brad Keelor. He is Marc Ballouz. Next up on Director's Cut, find out exactly how long it's been since he was beardless, had no facial hair. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, I sit down with a different GI member who has stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some are professional, but all of them, every time, I don't know how we do it, but they are all fun. Now, you may have noticed, you may have said to yourself, every week, he's doing an episode every day this week. Yes, we are, because it is our third annual Director's Cut Labor Day extravaganza, where we do 4 episodes in 4 days. This is the second one, so you've got 2 more to look forward to this week. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this today, you should head over to geo-institute.org. There you will find out that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. If you like what you see today, and I can always guarantee that you will, because we make these fun, we make them entertaining, we make them informative, so many other things, you should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Joining us today, another long-distance Director's Cut. Every now and then we have one of these from his home in Beirut, Lebanon. He's the current president of the International Society of Soil Mechanics and Geotechnical Engineering, ISSMGE. You'll hear a little bit more about that later. And he's also a geotechnical forensics consultant, founder of IGM. And we will talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. It is Marc Ballouz. Marc, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Brad. I like the way you put it in an exciting way.
we got to keep the people intrigued, Marc. They got to keep coming back for more.
Is gaining so much popularity. Good for you. I'm happy to be here with you.
We've got 10 questions, the same as we do for every guest, and 2 of them are the same that we ask every single show. We start with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Wow, my job. I always had geotechnical engineering in my head as a profession that requires approach from different angles. So I've done it all in my life, shifting from being a teacher to a contractor to a researcher, and studying it at Texas A&M University. That's where I graduated from with a PhD. And then moving to becoming an expert in forensic geotechnics consultancy. So I retired from contracting world, which gave me a strong background in putting together solutions that work, and that's my strength, grabbing both sides of the spectrum, the industry and the theory, put it together. So that's my strength, if you ask me, and that's my job when I go to a consultancy project.
That's great. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the interview. And then your other job, the ISSMGE presidency, we'll talk about that as we go through this too.
Yeah.
But we got to go for the hard-hitting questions on Director's Cut, the really serious stuff. And we dive right into that with this. What is the best thing that you've eaten in the past week?
Wow. As a Lebanese, that's an easy question, especially if your mother is still alive and she cooks every day. The best meal is anytime I go visit my mom, and it was on Sunday. And she did what we call in Lebanon siyadiyya, which is fish and rice that takes a long time to cook. So you cook the fish and you boil it, and with the sauce of the fish you cook the rice, and then you put ornaments like almonds, pine nuts, and it's a very delicious meal. And I'm sure many of you will know about it. CAD. And if you Google it, you'll get it right there, how to cook CAD.
And we are going to put information on that and maybe a link to a recipe or something down in the show
Yes.
notes below the video where you're watching this now, so all of our viewers can see that if they have not experienced it. And you got me with the almonds and the pine nuts. Like, and I love any Middle Eastern food, and one of the big reasons
and caramelized onions.
Oh yeah, they're all winners, Mark. They're all winners. Our third question in the interview is always our research and practice question. And your specialty, you went over it a little bit when you talked about your job is bringing together theory and practice. And that's the lecture that you like to give, is the marriage between theory and practice. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did that start? What do you talk about? And why do you think this is important?
From the very beginning, as a young student, even before engineering, I was a handyman. And when I was studying civil engineering, I always liked soil mechanics because of the lab that goes with it. And I could feel it. So I could feel the soil. And to me, you cannot give a solution without feeling it, how it's going to, behave. So that's marriage between theory and practice, is when you put together a theoretical solution that will work. And that's actually, I'm touring the world as president of ISSMGE with such a lecture, not because I don't have another one, but because I see so much interest in it. People, happy to listen about how to be careful with, starting with even the simplest operation of matching the units. Make sure the units are matching. Imagine in the US, we're still using feet and pounds. Nowhere else in the world are doing that. And one famous story is when the satellite taking images on Mars collapsed because of the difference in units between the software given by the European inventor and the software that was created by NASA. And then so on and so forth, how to live your engineering life, observing what's happening, equilibrium equations, etc., bearing capacity equation when you're walking on sand. So from those simple things to the more sophisticated things in earthquake design, and what's the wave gonna do to this building, to the foundations. So marrying theory and practice is key for success, in my opinion. You can have very important and famous theoreticians that will give you a solution that will not work. And you can have a foreman who's been in the field for 40, 50 years who will give you a solution that's cost triple or that will collapse. So putting these two together will give very few good engineers in the world. That's my opinion.
So when you were a student, this is one that I've never asked on this show, and I don't know why, because I just thought of it, I guess. Did you avoid either one of those, or did you take theory and practice equally? I mean, a different major, right? I did policy stuff, science policy, but I hated theory courses. I wanted nothing to do with it. Were you into both, or did you prefer one over the other?
Yes. Excluding mathematics and differential equations and all the trigonometry, these are math, but I refused all engineering theories that I could not feel. I have to test it somehow. And because I was a handyman and I really wanted to feel it. Also, when I was a student, and this very few people know, maybe dancing, many people know it. But when I was a civil engineering student, I came second in Lebanese championship in dancing. At the time, it was disco and breakdance. And now I still like to do it when I hear the music, even as president. People enjoy the gala dinners. They always ask me, please open the stage with dancing, and I invite everybody for dancing. Also, I was a Lebanese champ in trap shooting, clay pigeons.
Yeah.
And because of my also military background as a young young teenager, I was kind of forced to join the militia during the civil war in Lebanon. And towards the end, I became a commander of artillery. And that's when my dad, and that's a surprise for everybody, my dad came and gave me an acceptance, F1 we call it, to go get my student visa to Texas A&M University. He had applied on my behalf to push me away from a country at war because I was involved in the war. And he said, go get your master's degree and come back as an officer, please. So when I went to Texas A&M, that was the plan, to come back, but I stayed there. And I spent 1/3 of my life in Texas. So I consider myself an American citizen, fully ready to serve anytime.
So with all these varied things in your background, this walks us right into the next question. If somebody had to introduce you in only one sentence, what would you want them to say?
Oh, he's multi-talented. I came third in skiing, snow skiing. I can show you pictures of me flying 30, 40 feet in the air with flips and stuff. That was when I was young. I still can do some stuff like that. So I'm good in sports also. But engineering was always my passion, not only my profession, especially geotech. So multi-talented engineer.
That's great. We also ask a lot of songs. We ask a lot of questions on Director's Cut about nostalgia. We make you think back. And I do always say that we go back to either food, sports, or music always on Director's Cut. And that's okay, because those are three great topics to talk about. So I wanted to ask you a music question now. And it's a simple one, but there's going to be a lot of memories in here. What song reminds you most of your childhood?
I've always liked it, and I had some videos of my photos put to the song together with the music. Deep Purple, Soldier of Fortune.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I was a soldier and fortunate to stay alive. And it's a melancholic song that I had to listen to when I was away, especially the first years at Texas A&M, because the war was still going, and I could hear my friends becoming martyrs one after the other. So that was my song at the time. That it's melancholic, unfortunately, but it brings back strong memories. Not good, not bad, but deep.
But I think that for most people, if you ask them this question, I think they would pick a sad or melancholy song. The happy pop songs don't tend to stick with you for your entire life. Like, you remember maybe a good moment that was attached to that song, but what you just described, that's a long period of time. It wasn't one specific moment that was attached to it. So maybe there's something to that. Ugh.
Yeah, that was kind of my music too, like Deep Purple and Stairway to Heaven by, forgot their name.
Zeppelin, Led Zeppelin. Yeah.
Led Zeppelin, yes, Led Zeppelin.
Oh,
and, the soft rock, Phil Collins.
We'll put a link to the Deep Purple song down in the show notes also, so people can go listen to that after they watch the interview. The other question that we ask everybody when they come on the show is, how did you first get involved with ASCE and GI?
Oh, when I was a student in Lebanon, I was a student at the American University of Beirut, AUB, which I think many people, many professors in the US know it because it's one of the best in the Middle East. the oldest definitely, and it's directly an American system. And we have a chapter. We had a chapter, ASCE chapter, at student chapter at AUB. You know, ASCE has 10 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10 is international, with student chapters in many universities abroad, especially American universities. And I was a student involved with ASCE a little bit, but more when I became master's student at A&M. So I joined ASCE there. But then I went off. So it was on and off, on and off. When I was busy with my company, because I started my own company, I worked with my father first, and then my company, late 90s, and it gained, you know, very strong. And we opened branches in 5 countries, design, build. So that my strength is design, build, again, practice and theory. And and then back after I retired from contracting, I got involved more with the International Society as a GI member. And
so I do want to ask about the international university student meeting. Everybody who comes on the show, at least a lot of people, will tell you, oh, it's the pizza and beer at the student chapter meetings that brought me in. Are the international student chapter meetings any different, or are they really, you did both, obviously, at AUB and then at A&M. Was there a big difference in what happened at the student chapter meetings, or were they roughly the same everywhere?
No, I was, how do I say it, on both sides, like pizza and beer at the North Gate, if you know it, at Texas A&M University, Dixie Chicken, if many Aggies maybe are watching. But I also was at the computer club. And my hobby, my passion was also, when I was a student at Texas A&M, was to develop software. At the time, it was BASIC, then Quick Basic, then Visual Basic. And I wrote my own PowerPoint. There was no PowerPoint or Microsoft. When other students were putting transparencies on the projector, I had my mouse with the wire behind my back. I was flipping when I was defending my PhD. The PhD, my thesis, my dissertation, my PhD dissertation. So I was on both sides, if you want, with the students involved.
I got to ask this one because, believe it or not, you are the 135th, I think, episode of Director's Cut. Not once ever has BASIC or QBasic come up. I have to ask a question about that because I did a lot of programming in both of those myself. What were your favorite and least favorite things about either BASIC or QBasic? I mean, I remember as a kid, even programming simulators into these things, whether it was for a project at school or whatever. And the biggest one we had to do was a lake that was on the US-Canada border. And we had to simulate how many fish would be caught in each country if there were an equal number of fishermen. And I loved stuff like that. But what I hated about BASIC, I hated the graphics. It was just so complicated to produce any graphics that were worth anything. So what did you love and hate about BASIC or QBasic?
Love is the easy writing of, it was DOS system. So you had to write everything. And as you said, it's very difficult to draw graphs, XY graphs, or do dynamic simulations of a pile moving, because I had to do it. And when I developed my PhD dissertation was on laterally loaded piles under dynamic loads. And I developed the theory to predict that. And we had to write the software for it. Fortunately, at the time, Visual Basic came out, and that was easier to write the architecture of the software and the subroutines. The mother routine and the subroutines were less error They were more error-free, if you want. So that was, with the Visual Basic, the buttons were easier. So that was towards the end of my PhD, and that's where I wrote the PowerPoint, my own PowerPoint, before PowerPoint. So I liked Visual Basic solved most of those issues. I don't know which version they are now, is Visual Basic.
That is great, though. I mean, and there was nothing more frustrating for me than we would create an image to play while the simulation was happening. Because yes, everybody watching who's like 20 years old, it really did take that long sometimes for the simulations to run. And you would get the graphics like 1 pixel off, and you'd have to go. Oh, I do not miss that.
Yeah, I did a couple of very interesting softwares with one was designing the mat foundation using the pre-stressed slabs, and I drew the whole slab with the tendons top and bottom.
Wow.
And another software I developed when I was a student was directional drilling, because I took a class in petroleum engineering, and you can, designing a vertical well that would turn and start going horizontally, and how to guide the gyroscope so you can suck more from the neighbor's well, neighbor's petroleum. So
that's great.
I did many software before quitting and becoming more practice side.
That was a good discussion. So thanks for bringing up basic. I appreciate that. We got to talk a little bit about the question that we teased at the beginning now. When was the last time you didn't have a beard?
The beard has a story. Because when I left Lebanon, I told my friends that I will start growing my beard until I come back. And that took many, many years, like 10 years. So yeah. I got used. Yeah, I started growing my beard when I landed in Texas in 1988, end of 88. So from 88 till I came back in 1996. So I studied in Texas, worked a little bit, and then came back.
And it never drives you crazy? Because, I mean, this is about as wild as I can get right here. I'm going to have to go do something to this later today. It never bothers you? How long did it take for you to get used to it?
It doesn't bother me, but it bothers the people I'm kissing. So no more discussion about, no details.
It's a good answer, though.
Yeah.
So
I had to remove it twice. I had to shave twice. Once when I got angry with my ex-wife, and she was picking me up from the airport, and she couldn't find me easily. And the other time, my girlfriend, a couple of years ago, she said, "Why don't you remove it to see how you look like?" And I did. And she liked it, but I said, maybe I should keep it. It's easier.
That was enough. We've got 3 questions left, and a couple of these we just had to put in here. You've practiced now in both the U.S. and Lebanon for decades. What are, in your opinion, the 3 biggest differences in engineering practice between the U.S. and Lebanon?
Wow, this question it's pretty much philosophical. This will take a long time, because I not only practiced in these 2 countries, but I had an operation in Africa, Nigeria, full-blown, full-blast equipment, engineers, office, a house. So Nigeria is something, Lebanon is something, Europe is something, and US is something. Unfortunately, the weakest point for an engineer in the US is like many professions, the lawyers. I meet engineers and they talk to you like lawyers are hovering above their heads. And this suffocates innovation. And for especially the young engineers, they want to comply. They don't want to take risks. They teach you, and they taught me to never say never or never say always in the reports. Always keep it vague. And in my opinion, the engineer should be clear. If he did the design, it's clear. It's mathematics. It's even geotechnical engineers. It's a clear. To me, it's not exact, but it's a science. In Lebanon, we follow the codes, like the US codes or European codes, but you have more freedom. In Nigeria, it's even worse. You don't look at lawyers anymore. So somewhere in between, I think Europe is where they take the innovation from the US, then practice it, and then it comes back to the US. And this is known, like any invention in the US, most inventions are created in the US, theories or even practical inventions from large companies, contractors. They created in the US, they go and get executed in Europe or in Asia, and then they come back and they are accepted because they've been tested elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it takes 30 to 40 years sometimes to come back and being executed, practiced in the US. And that's, to me, the big difference between US or elsewhere.
Perfect. So we didn't even have to get into 3 because you summed it all up with that 1. That was excellent. I like that. We have to talk for a little bit about it's still new-ish. You've been president of ISSMGE for about a year and a half, right? And for those of you watching, I hope, but I'm sure some people are saying, what's ISSMGE? You shouldn't be saying that. If you're a Geo-Institute member, you can be an ISSMGE member. It's $20 a year, and we put it right on your renewal form. All you have to do is check the box and pay the $20 and get all the great benefits. So, Marc, you became ISSMGE president last spring, like the spring of 2022. For you, what is your 2-minute pitch for why somebody should be an ISSMGE member?
Wow, that requires 2 days, but I'll try to summarize it in 2 minutes. When I was elected, ISSMGE is the oldest and largest society representing geotechnical engineering in the world. It was founded by the father of modern geotechnics, Carl Terzaghi. And that's when they got together, I think 15 countries, and it was in the US in 1936. Now we have more than 90 countries, and every 4 years, there's a change of president. So I was elected at the International Conference of ISSMGE or ICSMGE in Australia. And there were 5 candidates and 90 countries voting. So it's by voting. Remember, ISSMGE is a society of societies. It's not a society of personal members. So if you want to be part of ISSMGE, you have to go through your national society. So if you are a US engineer, you have to go through the Geo-Institute. And it's at the image of the United Nations. So one country, one vote, whether you have 10 engineers in a small country or 60 engineers in Nigeria or 100 engineers in Lebanon or 2,000 in Turkey or 12,000 in the US. All these countries get one vote. And that's why there was some push from the US that why should we be involved with ISSMGE? We are, bigger budget, we don't need them. And I'm taking this opportunity to tell to all my Geo-Institute colleagues, this is not the idea. many GI members are on the board of the international societies. The idea is to, well, let me put it in Kennedy's words. Don't ask what your country can do for you. Don't ask what your international family can do for you. Just join them for fun, for the love of your profession. Really, we're here to serve the profession. And when I was elected, I was a Geo-Institute governor, so on the board. And all my friends were happy. And I'm pushing the US to help if you want. So some countries' job is to help the international society, and this help will go to the weaker countries. It's not because we're strong that we should, avoid the international community. It's the opposite. And many people in the US or in France or in Norway or in Australia do that, especially if there is a catastrophe. They just come together as a community. And that's the spirit I'm trying to spread as president.
So for a GI member, for example, who's involved in a few technical committees as part of the Geo-Institute, they might ask themselves, why should I bother getting involved with the technical committees at the international level? What do you think somebody can stand to gain from being part of those committees?
It's very important to see how this particular problem is looked at in Indonesia or in Japan or in Canada or in Uruguay or in Argentina. And that's why, as soon as I became president, I launched, like you, but instead of Director's Cut, I called it the IITT. Mm-hmm. We are at our 9th episode now. So IITT bring together young and renowned engineers from the industry and from research professors to discuss 3 or 4 experts to discuss one subject from different angles, different geographical regions, different genders. So becoming international is the goal. And as president and ex-GI governor, I'm trying to remove those $20. And that's a surprise. I'm trying to put together a formula where all the countries are treated fairly, equally, which in my opinion, like many Americans, think that the US is not treated fairly as in the ISSMGE, but I'm trying to change that. So
well, we look forward to that. And thanks for summing it up and for giving everybody out there a message of why you should get involved with ISSMGE. And of course, we will put links to the TC application form so you can apply to join a technical committee.
Yes.
We'll put a link to ISSMGE membership down in the show notes below where you're watching this now. And if you have any questions, you can, of course, reach out to us or Mark.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but if any viewer just go to the ISSMGE.org, you can be involved with the technical committees, look at the awards. You can have an international award like a Bright Spark Lecture Award. You look at the events, international events. They're on an interactive map. Now, we did many changes. And we have exciting lectures, all for free, webinars at the Virtual University website. You can be involved with the Heritage Time Capsule. So many things happening on the international scene. And simply, you have the US Geotech family, you can join the international Geotech family.
And I think it's always important to remind people that just because you're involved in the international one doesn't mean that you can't be involved in your home country one. And the other way around is true too. We really encourage our members to be active in both groups. It will make your professional experience that much more whole.
Let me say one more thing. If you're involved with the International Society, you you become more important, if you want, on the national scene. And I can name many, even, the president of GI, many board members of GI, they're all on the international scene, Sisi, Dimitria Zeko, Jennifer, Lucy Wu, Jennifer Nix, and many friends in the Geo-Institute are working and on the team of ISSMGE.
So a fantastic endorsement for getting involved with the International Society. We have one final question, and we ask this one before we go on summer break. We ask it after we come back. I said that, we're all about nostalgia here on Director's Cut. We got to make you think back. And so we ask, what is your favorite summer memory of all time?
The best summer I had was when I took the decision one day to retire at the age of 49 from all contracting operation. I sold all the equipment and shut down. I just kept the name for consulting. And that summer I spent it on the lake at my house in Austin. And I would stay on the boat dock, fishing, cooking the fish. I had a fridge full of salads, and I didn't even go home on the hill, spending days and days just on the boat, the kayaks, and that was the fun summer of 2000, I want to say 17.
So I know that you love fishing. Every fisherman has great fishing stories. Bonus question here at the end. Give us one of your best fishing stories before we wrap up.
It's the story where I took a GI friend who was visiting on the kayak. And I said, as soon as we reach that tree, you're going to catch a fish. And I swear to God, as soon as he got a big mouth bass. And he said, who is down there? Who is the scuba diver? He could not believe it. I said, I want to know who is down. He was looking for the bubbles.
That's fantastic. So I guess the moral of that story is if you go fishing with Marc, you're going to catch fish. It sounds like it's going to be a good experience. So you might want to do that at some point in your life. Marc, you made it through all 10 questions and the bonus question and everything I threw at you along the way. And that was fantastic. So thank you for doing that. For all of our viewers, if you liked what you saw and you're here at the end, so you probably did, of course, click like, subscribe, get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. We will, of course, have 2 more episodes of Director's Cut this week. I mean, there's one every day, and if you missed the one yesterday, you can go back and watch that too and just get caught up. You can watch all the past episodes of Director's Cut. There's a lot up there on the YouTube channel. Marc, thank you for your answers and for your thoughtfulness, and I hope this was fun.
It's fun always with you.
That's our goal.
See you soon again.
And again, for all of our viewers, we will see you tomorrow with another brand new Director's Cut.
Good luck.